All right, this is the helicopter flying handbook. This will be chapter 5. We're on page 3 of 6. Altitude limitations. If the rotorcraft has a maximum operating density altitude, it is indicated in the section of the flight manual. Sometimes the maximum altitude varies based on different gross weights. Rotor limitations. Low rotor revolutions per minute's RPM does not produce sufficient lift, and high RPM may cause structural damage. Therefore, rotor RPM limitations have minimum and maximum values. A green arc depicts the normal operating range with red lines showing the minimum and maximum limits. Yes. There are two different rotor RPM limitations, power on and power off. Power on limitations apply anytime the engine is turning the rotor and is depicted by a fairly narrow green band. A yellow arc may be included to show a transition range, which means that operation with this range is limited due to the possibility of increased vibrations or harmonics. This range may be associated with tail boom dynamic modes. Power off limitations apply anytime the engine is not turning the rotor, such as when in an auto rotation. In this case, the green arc is wider than the power on arc, indicating a large operating range. Power plant limitations. The power plant limitations area describes operating limitations of the helicopter's engines, including such items as RPM range, power limitations, operating temperatures, and fuel and oil requirements. Most turbine engines and some reciprocating engines have a maximum power and a maximum continuous power rating. The max power rating is the maximum power the engine can generate and usually limited by time. The maximum power range is depicted by the yellow arc on the engine power instruments, with a red line indicating maximum power that must not be exceeded. Maximum continuous power is the maximum power the engine can generate continually and is depicted by the green arc. All right, the red line on the manifold pressure gauge indicates the maximum amount of power. A yellow arc on the gauge warns of pressure approaching the limit of rated power. A placard near the gauge lists the maximum readings for specific conditions. All right, let's take a look at these gauges. All right, so we already went through these gauges. So we've got airspeed. So typical airspeed indicator limitations and markings. 5-3 markings on a typical dual needle tachometer in a reciprocating engine helicopter. The outer band shows the limits of the superimposed needles when the engine is turning the rotor. The inner band indicates the power off limits. All right, we got torque and turbine outlet temperature, TOT gauges are commonly used with turbine-powered aircraft. And we're going to get into these ones next. So manifold pressure. The red line on manifold pressure gauge indicates the maximum amount of power. A yellow arc on the gauge warns of pressure approaching the limit rated power. A placard near the gauge lists the maximum readings on specific conditions, which is this placard, which is pretty super important. Altitude 1,000 feet. So cool. So yeah, we're going to go into weight and distribution loading. All right, we'll stop this and we'll stop in here on page 4 of 6, and we're going to continue on with weight and loading distribution. See ya.